Hi everyone, welcome. Welcome to Lays Real Talk. Um, I haven't done a live since last Thursday. It feels quite long, so I'm happy to be back. This is a topic that I've been wanting to do since last week, and yet I still feel like I could need another day or two to prepare. So let's see how I would do tonight. The topic is why Joe Biden and Xi Jinping may be helping each other. All right, so I've already uploaded the slides, and let's see. I hope everyone's week has been good so far. Good? All right. So, on the surface, the contention between Beijing and Washington is out there in the open amid increased geopolitical tensions. But the two guys, the two protagonists, Biden and Xi, may be helping each other behind the scenes. Now, Joe Biden doesn't want the ticking time bomb called China's economy to go off too soon, and Xi Jinping wants Joe Biden's help to beat out his political opponents, internally, of course. And both of them want to postpone a pending global economic crisis. Um, Although their help of each other may be temporary and behind the scene or under the table, depending on how you look at it, uh, it highlights some of the most complex geopolitical issues of our time. So tonight's discussion, I'll separate them into, they're organized based on three topics. The first, we'll talk about the impact of a Chinese economic meltdown, because that's really the foundation of this talk, because that's really the driver behind their seemingly friendly um, relation for the time being. So we need to understand the impact of a major Chinese economic meltdown, and then we'll talk about what does Joe Biden want from Xi Jinping, and then what Xi Jinping want from Biden. Okay, all right. So first things first. So we'll talk about um, China's economy and its impact when it falls. We know it's been in a very shaky state. How do we know? Well, China has been in this rare economic condition in which its stock market, bond market, real estate market, and exchange rate have all fallen. The downfall of all four indicators or indexes simultaneously is rare. Well, this is because we know when the stock and bond have an inverse relationship, right? When stock prices go down, bond prices go up. So when stock and bond prices both go down, together with real estate prices and exchange rate, and it's the currency, its currencies exchange rate against foreign currencies, it means that the country has a major credit crisis. It means the entire country has lost its credit. It's in a major financial trouble. And we know Joe Biden has called China's falling economy a ticking time bomb. The question now is, if the bomb goes off, how big of an impact would it have on us, on the US economy? So let's first understand its impact before we go to the other topics. Now, let me share with you this slide. Oh, this gentleman, he's very famous. He is Paul Krugman. Krugman. Oh, I need to take a sip of water. Sorry. Okay. Now I have confidence to pronounce people's names. Paul Krugman is a leading American economist who won Nobel Memorial Prize on Economics in 2008. Now, the Nobel Prize, the official Nobel Prize organization, does not acknowledge this prize because they wouldn't think economics. So it's called the Nobel Memorial Prize on Economics. But anyways, it's a Nobel Prize. So this gentleman wrote an opinion piece in New York Times on August 21st, and its title is How Scary is China's Crisis? And I have given you a screenshot of the Chinese version because English version asked me to pay, and I don't want to pay. Um, Anyways, so and its Chinese version is free and it has bilingual. So I read the English against the Chinese. Anyway, that's how I save money. But anyways, he basically said, this is what he wrote. He said, the answer, as far as I can tell, is that America's exposure to a potential China crisis is surprisingly small. And he said US direct investment in China and Hong Kong is about $215 billion. Okay, $215 billion. And portfolio investment, basically stocks and bonds, is a bit more than $300 billion. So he said, we're talking about $515 billion in total. And this is what he said. He said, that may not sound like a small number, but for an economy as big as ours, it is. So he compared the number to the US commercial real estate market, which many people worry is falling because of the workforce, the change in people's behavior, how a lot of people have been working from home. So he said that the US office buildings are currently worth about $2.6 trillion dollars. And so he said that's um, 5 times our total investment in China. And so he concluded, he said, a Chinese economic crisis may even have a small positive effect on the United States because it would reduce demand for raw materials, especially oil, and therefore has a result, it may have a positive impact on our economy because it might reduce inflation. So Mr. Krugman's view may be a popular one, but I disagree with him. With due respect to the Nobel Prize winning economist, I think he has severely underestimated the impact of a Chinese economic crisis on the world. First of all, Wall Street's investment in China is significantly more than $300 billion. I don't know the source of his numbers, but a Chinese economist, Mr. Chen Xiaonong, said last month in his YouTube program that by the end of 2021, China received an accumulative $2.1 trillion foreign investment in the financial sector, and the bulk of it came from the Wall Street, meaning mostly the US. These numbers obviously weren't released by Beijing. Mr. Chen came up with the number because he's been following China's Foreign Exchange Administration's annual report for years, and he's been scrubbing data from that report and calculated on his own. And that number is not, he said, is not available to, I think, foreign visitors visiting that data set. But he was able to get the data up until the end of 2021. Now, Mr. Chen was trained in both China and the US, and he has a PhD from Princeton University. And he is one of my most respected Chinese economists. I featured him on this talk on how he came up with the $2.1 trillion in my September 16th video titled "Breaking Up." So if you want to see what exactly did he say, you can watch that video. So I know trying to get Chinese data is like walking in a labyrinth. You have to have a native knowledge to be familiar with the place before knowing where to go. So it's very difficult for foreign scholars to know the truth of China's economy if they don't study China or China's economy as the core subject. So I don't blame Mr. Krugman for underestimating the number, because if he follows the official CCP numbers, that's probably what most people get. Now, foreign direct investment may also be over than the number 215 billion. So regardless, and I don't have any number than that. My gut feeling is it's also understated. If the official financial investment in China is underestimated by almost 9 times, foreign direct investment is also underestimated. So no matter what, I think total American investment tied up in China is in the trillions, not hundreds of billions. If American commercial real estate market, or to be exact, it's American office building, the value of American office buildings, it may not equate to commercial real estate market. So if that's 2.6 billion, then total American investment in China is not too far behind that number. Let's say it's $2 trillion, just for the sake of the exercise. That's 80% of the 2.6 trillion, right? That's 80% of the total value of US office buildings. Now, think about it. If we lose 80% of the value of all US office buildings in this country, can you say that we don't have a major impact on our economy? Right? If we lose $2 trillion in China, which is the equivalent of 80% of the total value of US office buildings, we can't say it's nothing. So that's my argument number one. And another factor Mr. Krugman ignored is the impact on American allies. Now, when China's economy falls, it doesn't just impact the United States. It will impact the strategic allies of the US, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. US may have the most financial investments in China thanks to Wall Street, but it's not the country that has the biggest direct investment. The top 4 countries that have the most direct investment in China in 2017, for example, are Singapore, Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan. And US ranked number 5. So if China's economy falls, it will impact Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, and Singapore. So the US is the largest economy in the world and may be able to withstand the impact, but the impact on the other Asian countries will be more severe. So Japan, for example, has invested significantly in China, particularly in the early days of the economic reform. So what happened to my slides? What happened to that slides? My slides. Huh? I lost a slide. I wish I have that. Sorry. How can I share that? It's not here. There's a slide that shows. It can be. I worked on that. Where did it go? Not this one. Not this one. Not this one. Not this one. Oh, it's not here. Sorry. There's a slide that shows. Maybe I'll post it in my community. Okay, I'll post that picture in my community board just to show you the picture. It shows the percentage, Japan's percentage of investment. Like in all of China's foreign investment, the percentage Japan has had in the past decades in terms of both the value, the amount of investment, and also the number of enterprises. You see, in the early days of China's economic reforms, up to 15% of China's foreign investment came from Japan. That's significant. It has come down over the years, but in the early days, Japan has invested so much into China. So if China's economy falls, it will have a huge impact on Japan. And I was just hearing a friend who has been living in Japan for many years, and he told me, he said, Japan's supply chain would be disrupted because there's just so many Japanese manufacturers that have set up manufacturing facilities in China. It w- they you know they it will impact them. It has already impacted them. So you can't, when we talk about if China's economy fall, it's all around the world. And when the US allies, I mean strategic allies like Japan and South Korea and Taiwan hard hit, um, we will also feel, the impact in this geopolitical confrontation with China, right? So that's my second reason. And the third factor that he didn't consider is China has significant investment in the US. When China's economic meltdown starts, and if Xi Jinping and the CCP orders its SOEs and other wealthy individuals or enterprises to withdraw large amounts of investments from the West, our financial system will bleed dangerously. Situation worse than the Silicon Valley Bank and Credit Suisse crisis, which we saw in spring, in March. Was it in March? It was in March. Situations or crises like that will repeat again. When they withdraw large amounts of investment in our system, it's going to be another major financial crisis. So, my point is the world's two largest economies are too intertwined and they are connected financially. If one goes down, the other will be hit too. And it's impossible not to feel the impact. And you can't say it may be a positive thing because China will not consume as much oil as it does now. Because what if it starts a war? Then its defense industry, then it will still consume oil. So that's just my view on the impact of this ticking time bomb. So now let's talk about what does Joe Biden want from Xi Jinping, right? Uh, I think a better title is what does Joe Biden does not want from Xi Jinping. I think Joe Biden understands the impact of China's economic time bomb more than Mr. Krugman. Biden and his advisors know full well that if Beijing has an economic meltdown, the US economy will take a big blow. And particularly when the US is struggling with its own economic problems. Um, and if this happens too soon, and if this happens before the 2024 election, his chance of winning another term is non-existent. So he has every interest of not wanting to have this time bomb be detonated before the next election. Now let's talk about the U.S. economy isn't doing as well as some people want us to believe. I just want to talk about the debt problem because it is serious. I mean, because I have talked so much about China's debt problems, the U.S. also has a very serious debt problems. The U.S. government debt is at an astronomical $33 trillion now, and that's $100,000 per capita. That means every U.S. citizen carries $100,000 national debt. So for a family of four, they showed a $400,000 national debt. And that's almost twice the average household mortgage amount, which was at $236,000 as of 2022. I mean, I'm just giving you some reference points so you know the scale of the problem. Worse yet, about $7.9 trillion of interest-bearing treasury securities will mature within the next 12 months. Actually, here I do have slides. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So, and that's about 31%. Uh, it will mature within 12 months. Actually, 7.1 billion, I mean, trillion of the 7.9 trillion, almost all of it, or 90% of it, I'm going to make this bigger so you can see. Here's a schedule. I found this schedule. So if you look at the maturity date, so January 2024, right? You have $7.1 trillion, which represent 30% of the total outstanding debt will mature. That's 7.1 trillion. And that's within 4 months. And this is a serious this is a serious problem because when the debt matures, the U.S. government either has to pay off the debt or take new debt to pay back the old ones. But with the high interest rate, it will significantly increase the interest expense, right? So with the interest rate being so high now, um, the government's interest expense can double. So if I do a rough estimate, let's assume a blended average interest rate of 3%. Okay, for quick dirty math, 3% with $33 trillion debt. That could be $1 trillion annual interest expense for the U.S. government, right? And how much revenue did U.S. government have last year? 5 trillion. So 20% of the federal government's budget will be for paying interest. Basically, the U.S. government has borrowed 6 times its annual income. And can you imagine a family spending 20% of their income to pay interest? I think it's just it will be very difficult. So, and also, according to the Congressional Budget Office, it projects a federal budget deficit of 1.4 trillion for 2024. So you have $1 trillion interest expense, and then you have 1.4 trillion budget deficit. That means your debt keeps growing every year. As you cannot balance the budget, you create more debt. You have to borrow more, and with the interest rate so high, I mean, it's just a nightmare. It's a nightmare. So, with that said, I think it's in Joe Biden's best interest not to detonate this economic time bomb, right? Coming from China. It's just he, he wants to postpone that to after the election. Because Joe Biden cannot afford to have the American economy go down. If there's any major financial market volatility triggered by a Chinese meltdown, I don't think he has any chance to be reelected. Um, I think it's funny if you think about it. I think Joe Biden cares about China's economy more than Xi Jinping does. Xi Jinping doesn't care if his people have money or don't have money. He just cares about staying in power, right? Indefinitely. Um, but Joe Biden cannot afford to have the Chinese economic time bomb go off too soon before the election, and he wants to postpone it. That's why he has been persistently asking to set up a channel of dialogue with the Chinese. And if you look at the Sino-US relations or communications in the past couple of months, it has been almost exclusively economic matters, right? Joe Biden's Treasury Secretary, his Commerce Secretary have visited China within the last 2 months or 3 months. A senior Treasury Department official said on Janet Yellen's flight back to Washington that her trip was successful in establishing ties with China's new economic team and setting, quote, setting a floor in the relationship between the two countries. And it says it's a favorite phrase among U.S. officials to describe effort with China, setting a floor in the relationship. I mean, that just tells you they do not want, I mean, the worst, they want to prevent the worst from happening. And it has to do with China's economy, no matter how you look at it. All the US, almost the entire US effort in in building Sino-US relations is dedicated to economic affairs. So at the end of September, we know that 2 new US-China working groups on economic and financial issues were set up. They will meet on a regular basis and report to Janet Yellen on the US side and to China's Vice Premier He Lifeng, the highest ranking CCP official in charge of the economy under the Premier. Um, China's Ministry of Finance will be our Treasury Department's counterpart for the Economic Working Group, while the People's Bank of China, its central bank, will be the counterpart for the Financial Working Group. The Chinese issued statements confirming those two groups, but did not offer any details on their work. The official press statement from Janet Yellen said, she said she has reiterated to Chinese officials that the U.S. will use the groups to promote cooperation where possible with China on global challenges, including restructuring debt for distressed developing economies, climate finance, and anti-money laundering efforts. I think the real purpose of these work groups here's my words. I think the real purpose of these work groups is to deter major economic or financial volatility leading up to the 2024 US election. Why do I say that? Right? I can't just make claims out of nowhere. Well, this is because a Chinese analyst who's very smart, who said that Biden and the Wall Street have actually helped Xi Jinping and China's central bank in the financial market recently. He argued that the US government has helped the dollar-yuan exchange rate. The US government basically has helped the Chinese government to preserve the the yuan valuation in this exchange rate battle. So let me show you some chart. I did the chart. This is the debt. Yeah, this is U.S. debt. So if you look at this chart, it's 30-day trend comparison. On the left, it's the dollar to yuan exchange rate for the past 30 days leading up to September 28th. And on the right, it's the USDX index for the same period. The USDX index is basically an index that measures the value of US dollar relative to a basket of foreign currencies. You could see the makeup of other currencies here, right? Euro, pound, sterling, Japanese yuan. So so the chart on the right indicates the value, the exchange rate, the value of US dollar in relations to other major currencies, whereas the chart on the left indicates the dollar yuan exchange rate for the same period. And there is, I don't know if you noticed something. I drew a line. Okay, so here's the trend. So for the US dollar to Chinese yuan, it fluctuated a little bit, but it remained flat for the most of the 30-day period. You could say it's basically flat, right? Whereas the index, the USDX index, the US dollar against other major currencies has been on upward trend. And this tells us something is happening, because this is very abnormal. So what it says is the US dollar index has remained an uptick trend against other foreign currencies in the 30-day period, meaning that the US dollar has appreciated steadily over a mixture of other currencies. However, the exchange rate to renminbi has remained flat, and this is abnormal, because if anything, the graphs should be reversed, right? The US index should remain flat with other major currencies, but has appreciated over renminbi. So, the other way to look at this abnormal situation is this. So how could renminbi remain so strong against US dollar when all major currencies have devalued during the same period? That's the question. That's the question that's worth, I don't know, billions of dollars. It's unthinkable that the renminbi has outperformed all other major currencies, right? So the conclusion here is there's no way the Chinese government, I mean, there has been a major battle behind the scene to fight for the renminbi, uh, to preserve its value against the dollar, right? So the question is, who has fought this battle? There's no way that the Chinese government could have won this battle alone using its precious foreign reserves. So the analyst concluded, he's in investment. He concluded that the US government and Wall Street have been helping the Chinese, during that period, particularly towards the end of that period. If you look at that chart, it was towards the end, like the last uh, 10 days of that 30-day period, you clearly see an uptick on the USDX index. It's clearly going up, whereas the dollar yuan exchange rate remained perfectly flat. That's when the US government and Wall Street was helping the Chinese government to fight for the renminbi. Okay, so that's my proof to say that Joe Biden and Wall Street have been working hand in hand to help Xi Jinping and China's central bank. I'm not saying this, just because I think it's what's happening. We have graphs to back up the claim. And this picture is worth what? 1,000 words? Is that the expression? This picture is priceless. This picture is posted on the website of China's what do you call that? China's the head of Pan Gongshen, the head of China's central bank, and the state administration of foreign exchange, met with Henry Paulson, chairman of Paulson Institute. Now, Henry Paulson was the Treasury secretary under George W. Bush, and he has visited China for over 100 times. So he's one of the Wall Street veteran that's very close to China. So people say, well, when you see China's foreign exchange administration post this picture on its website, it sends a signal. These words tell us the two sides are working hand in hand, fighting for Chinese yuan. This picture proves it, not just those two graphs. Okay. All right. Okay, so now I have explained to you what Joe Biden wants, and also the fact that he has already helping Xi Jinping. Now let's talk about what does Xi Jinping want. Well, these three guys we know have been missing in action, right? China's Foreign Minister Qin Gang disappeared in July, followed by the former Defense Minister Wei Fenghe, who's affiliated with the Rocket Force, or the Rocket Force scandal, and now the latest we've seen is its current Defense Minister Li Shangfu. But if you really look closely to the allegations surrounding their disappearance, or the rumors surrounding their disappearance, there's a commonality. Okay. Let me tell you, well, Qin Gang has, his story is known all over the world because of his affair with his mistress and the son. So a week ago, the Financial Times had an article saying that Qin Gang got into trouble because he had a surrogate son who is an American. Now, a Chinese high-ranking official having an American son is problematic. And so his biggest problem is he has an American, or he somehow has a son who was born in the US and have a US passport. Um, so that's his trouble. Now, Wei Fenghe was affiliated with the Rocket Force, right? Because he was the former Rocket Force commander. Now, the entire Rocket Force scandal was corruption, but behind that, we know there has been so many talks about the commanders or the former deputy commanders, their sons, their daughters, or their children um, are somehow tied to the Americans, or they live in the United States, or they have studied in the United States, or they have some kind of affiliation with the Americans, and therefore have been suspected of having selling intelligence or information to the Americans. So that's the Rocket Force story behind Wei Fenghe. Li Shangfu uh, is also corruption, and there also has been rumors and speculations and talks about his son, who also lives in the United States and has been compromised. You see, the commonality is the United States or the West, right? Um, that was just my suspicion. I couldn't really confirm it until last week. The rumor surrounding China's premier Li Qiang all of a sudden came up. You guys must have seen this post. This post is about Li Qiang's wife and daughter. Their information is revealed, but what's most alarming or um, damning is Li Qiang has a son who is a foreign, or he's rumored to have a son because we cannot confirm that. Um, they say that he might have a son-in-law who is a foreign national, who is, I think his name, what's his name? I have his name somewhere. Um, Chris, Forbes. Oh my goodness, I all of a sudden forgot his name. His name is all over Chinese media, social media. Oh, he's a Hardy Christopher Forbes, and he is from the United Kingdom. He's an architect. So again, as China's premier, how could you have a son-in-law who is a foreign national? You could be, your daughter could be disclosing sensitive information to a foreigner. So you see, the commonality is that they all have some kind of connections to the West. So their scandals that got all of them into troubles, or to be into trouble. We don't know if Li Qiang is in trouble, but the poor man looks so sad at the National Day banquet on September the 28th, when he was the host as the premier, but he didn't give a speech, and Xi Jinping gave a speech, but the man looked so sad. But anyways, there's troubles have a commonality, and that is they're all somehow connected to the West via a family member. And I think this is the strategy Xi Jinping's enemy has deployed to take down his allies one by one, right? So because Xi Jinping is famous for his uh, East rising, West falling expression, and he's known for his wolf warrior approach to international affairs. So his enemy is very clever in using Xi's anti-West policy to bring down his allies one by one. And the latest released information on Premier Li Qiang is the most revealing, because having a son-in-law who's a foreign national isn't a big deal normally. You could say, well, my daughter wants to marry him. What can I do? But it somehow has become scandalous. The only reason it became scandalous is because Xi Jinping's it's because Xi Jinping's own mandate of cutting ties with the West And so his political enemy is making it a big deal. And I think it's very smart. So here's what Xi Jinping wants. This is not looking good. I mean, if you look at this since July, right? When did Qinggang was the first official that who fell. That was July, and we're now in October. So in 3 months, so many heads have rolled, and these are all people Xi Jinping trusted or trusts, and they have fallen because of this strategy, because of Xi Jinping's anti-West position. And so I think Xi Jinping, to prevent himself to fall further into this trap by his enemy, he has no choice but to turn friendly to the West, particularly the United States, because the most effective way to crush his opponents is for him to say, no, 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 you guys got it all wrong. I'm not against the West. Look, I can get along with Joe Biden pretty well. We're building relations. We're working together. The so-called anti-West policy is only to prevent corruption. I'm not in principle against the West. I'm only against corruption, blah, blah, blah. So it's a political move. He has to make a political move to prevent more of his officials to fall. I mean, it's dangerous. I mean, the way it has been happening is seriously dangerous. So his move, it's a political move. It's not an economic move. So even though the two sides are setting up these economic work teams, from the CCP's perspective, it's a political move. It's not an economic move, nor a diplomatic one. It's only a move to stay ahead of his political enemies. This is because all CCP leaders' economic policies are driven by their political ambition. So with that said, Xi Jinping is fighting back. He must. And one of the things that's threatening is, remember the Nikkei Asia's report, 3 articles. Maybe I should show you this. I actually have this. Remember the 3 articles by Nikkei Asia they released about Beidaihe summer meeting, and I have been saying that we don't think the meeting actually happened. It's a propaganda piece. It's purposely released by Xi Jinping's enemy to a Western media to show that the anti-Xi forces are well coordinated. So this was the first piece, and that was the second piece. There was a 94-year-old, what's his name, Chi Haotian, a PLA general who used to be the defense minister, who was said to have joined Zheng Qinghong at this meeting, where the party elders challenged Xi Jinping. Remember, the article said that the 94-year-old man sat next to Zheng Qinghong without saying a word. Now we know this is purely fabrication, because at the national banquet on September the 28th, that 94-year-old man attended the banquet. Do you think Xi Jinping would invite him to the banquet if he sat opposite Zheng Qinghong to oppose him? I don't think so. So I think the 94-year-old man probably couldn't care less. Either way, he probably doesn't want to be involved in any of the factions. But Xi Jinping probably forced him to come to this banquet, to show up, just to crush the rumor that he has a formidable opposition internally. So, the two sides are fighting. For now, Xi Jinping's strategy is to work some deals with Joe Biden. And I think nobody studies their opponents as well as the CCP. The CCP has studied Joe Biden so well. They know exactly what Joe Biden wants. They know Joe Biden is afraid to have China's economy fail. They know this very well. They know what Joe Biden fears. So that's why the two sides are talking. They all want something from each other. And so for the time being, things may look a little easygoing between the two leaders. But it's only temporary. It's only temporary from both sides. Once they gain the upper hand internally in their own political struggles, it's game over. Then they're back to a contentious stage again. But this is only temporary because they both need it for their own internal politics. All right, it's quite a lot for me to utter. So let me see if people have questions. All right, let me go through the super chat questions first. I saw a donation from Aja. Well, no question, but thank you, Aja, for the donation. Thank you for your generosity. Let me see. Next, if you have questions, put my name in front so I know it's addressed to me. Uh, okay. I'm gonna. Oh, here's one. Peter John, find your presentations very useful. Oh, good. I'm happy to hear that. Thank you, Peter. Um, okay, that seems to be the end of the super chats. Let me see if people have questions. I'm going to go back a little bit and just start from the middle. I'm going to pick random questions. If you have questions, please put my name in the front. I will see. Okay. Hmm. There's some lively discussions. Okay. Nick Furry. Question: does CCP even do or care about accurate accounting? They could have just pulled a figure out of the hat or even print more yuan. Who is even checking? Well, they did. I think right now there's probably data integrity is a big problem. But they have two set of books. They do need to report real statistics to their superior. So, like in terms of they do, even though they don't tell the world how many people died in the pandemics, in the the real casualties, the real incidence rate, and all of that, but internally they do keep track of that, or they at least attempt to keep track of that. So at the very top, the top leaders do know how many people died, and the real situation of the pandemic. So they have two sets of books. They do try to keep track of the real number. Now, the lower ranking officials, in order to cover up their lack of their problems or lack of accountabilities, they may cook the book. And so I really question the data integrity of anything collected in China. All right. So, but at least they do. So, for example, I saw the other day that like CCP's internal reporting on the real casualty of COVID, their own reported number is 200 million. Is 200 million people, and someone who worked in the funeral industry, in the burial, I don't know what you call that, in that business, uh estimated based on the numbers, yeah, she estimated 300 million. So it is in the hundreds of millions, you know. All right. Um Mitsu, I think you nailed the problem, and for the US, if BlackRock collapses, it will be catastrophic and they are likely over leveraged. I hate BlackRock and wouldn't care, but it would hurt many. Yeah, it would, like, when the banks, the Silicon Valley Bank, when these financial institutions fall because of China, um, yeah, a lot of people's money would be at stake. Um, it's There's a Chinese saying, 你中有我，我中有你. Like, I have assets in your market and you have assets in my market. We're we're together. So you wouldn't let me die, because if I die, you're gonna come with me. It's that kind of it's like a tying a time bomb to both of us, right? So the CCP's economy is a time bomb, but the US is tied to it. So that's why Joe Biden doesn't want it to go off, at least not now. They try to postpone it, and the CCP knows that. They know exact, so they're playing that to its advantage. And so all these economists who are saying, "Oh, it's nothing. When China's economy goes off, it will be nothing." I don't know what they're thinking. If they truly believe that it's nothing, or they're just saying that because it's politically correct to say it. Anti-social man. I really do not think the CCP knows Joe Biden as much as the CIA knows the CCP. The fact that they were able to use the espionage law against them to bring down their people is scary. Um, okay, your statement is correct, and my statement is also correct. You know why? Because CCP doesn't know CCP, or people in that system do not know the strength of the United States. They do not understand the strength of the market economy, the strength or the values of democracy, um, or, all the strength of US political system. They cannot understand or comprehend or appreciate. But you know what? CCP has one ability that you cannot discredit. And take my word for it. I'm saying a lot of Westerners don't recognize this. You've got to listen. They know people's weaknesses very well. They don't know people's strength, but they know human weaknesses so well. They know what you fear. They know what you desire. They know your ego, and they know how to stroke your ego. They know how to satisfy your desires. So they know how to take advantage of your weaknesses so well. So you're right. You are right. They don't know Joe Biden or the US, but on the other hand, they also know. Unfortunately, so the people, I always say, the people who CCP fear the most are the people who have very high um, uh, moral integrity. People whose um, whose weaknesses are not cannot be easily um, taken advantage of, right? So that comes to question. So what can Joe Biden do? What can Because we all have weaknesses. You can't, right? We could say, well, we all have weaknesses, we all have desires, and we all have egos. You can't, Then are you saying that none of us can deal with the CCP? No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, if Joe Biden only thinks for himself, then he's losing the game to the CCP. If he keeps his country and his people's interest first, then he could win this. He could win this struggle with the CCP, this battle with the CCP. So his priority, if he only thinks about his political party and the next election and what he wants to get out of this at the cost of his country, then he will lose. um, because he cannot, because the CCP will go lower than him. They can do anything. So the only way Joe Biden can win this if he really takes his country, his people ahead of his own political interest. Then the CCP cannot do anything. Okay, And it goes with all politicians. And CCP knows that. They fear those people who are selfless. I tell you, CCP actually respect those people who are selfless and who are courageous, who takes other people's interests ahead of themselves. So some people ask me if am I afraid? I'm not afraid because you have to know what CCP is scared of. They are scared of people um, who can be truly selfless. You know, they they don't do anything to those people. Um, so that's what we should do. If we take our collective interest above our own personal interest, then we can win. But if we always take our own personal interest above the rest of the people, we'll lose to CCP. You look very nice today. Okay, I think it's probably because I put my hair up. Okay. Marcus Wilson. So if Xi and Biden help each other, then is it good for American people? Why and how? Um, it really depends on how you look at it. I think people will argue either ways. Some people would say it's good because we postpone, rather than having a major financial crisis in 2024 and we all suffer and pay a price, we just push that to the future because people don't want to deal with it now. Is that good? To some people, it's good. To some people, it's not good because you're not really getting rid of the problem. If you can get rid of the problem, then it's good. But if you're not getting rid of the problem, but only just sweep it under the rug, and then it's still there. And just like Evergrande, right? I saw that in 2012, a company, a American investment research company, was saying that the Evergrande had a problem. It's not investable in 2012, and then I think Evergrande sued the company and then lost the legal case. But everything it said 10 years ago or 11 years ago was correct. But if people had addressed the problem and recognized the problem of Evergrande, then we wouldn't have this disaster today. So not dealing with the problem, just pushing it to the future is very dangerous. So you ask me, is it good for the American people? I don't think I think we're selfish because we are seeking temporary relief and we're seeking temporary comfort at the cost of our children and our future generation. So is that good? It's good for us, but it's not good for our children. So depending on when you say is it good for American people, it depends on who the American people are. So no straight answer. Um, Alejandro Sudiro. How successful is the CCP in infiltrating the US government? There are news about the Biden family is heavily indebted to the CCP. Well, his son, Hunter Biden, was in business with Ye Jianming, one of the Chinese business tycoons, right? So the question is, and that tycoon has been, has been reprimanded, investigated, and locked up. So if there are if there are damning evidence that Hunter Biden has in the hands of Xi Jinping, then it's not looking good for Joe Biden, right? Unless he is strong enough to say, I don't care what you do. I don't care. Even if you're going to disclose all these um, so quote unquote so-called evidence, if I have to lose the reputation of my son, my family, and myself, I'm still going to do the right thing to defend my country, then they're going to back down. But does Joe Biden have that kind of courage to do that? Because when you fight for your country, you cannot consider, you just have to, yeah. So again, to him, it's a priority question, right? If he can do that, then then the CCP can't do anything. Ptolomeo Salamanca. Like, how do you think the semiconductor chip issue will play out with the US and China in the next few years? I think these laws that the US has passed is not like the magic wand that will protect the US from leaking sensitive technology to the Chinese. Didn't we see that today in the news? That four Taiwanese companies, semiconductor companies, smaller ones, have been helping the mainland Chinese developing Huawei to develop the 7 nano chip, the nanometer chip in China. They were helped by some Taiwanese semiconductor companies. So you could set up laws, but how you enforce law is another issue. The more law you pass, the more enforcement, the more people, the more budget you need to enforce a law, and that could be costly. And and then there will always be loopholes. And the CCP and the Chinese are very good at taking advantage of these loopholes. So it's just it's hard, right? So it's very hard. So you could pass this law unless the US really want to have serious decoupling, like really cut the tie clean, then it's a different story. But if you want to pick and choose and you try to use different laws to say, okay, I'm going to limit this, but not that, you can do this, but not that, you're creating a mission impossible for yourself because how are you going to enforce that? You know, I always look at companies that have all kinds of rules and regulations and policies. I'm like, you're creating more work for yourself because you cannot enforce that. Same with parents who want to, discipline their children. You want to have rules that can be enforced. If you cannot enforce it, then don't do it. So I think there are a lot of loopholes for the Chinese to take advantage of. Okay. Um, Mitsu, you know what's really funny? Mandarin was made the official dialect for China, but we know Ni Hao is Chinese, but never know Bye Bye came from Cantonese. Cantonese became part of English. Really? Bye Bye came from Cantonese? I didn't know that. I know ketchup was a Chinese word. Okay, Brian Smith. Isn't it also true that if CCP is kept from meltdown by US and its South China Sea allies, the CCP may become less aggressive? I don't think the CCP will. I don't think this temporary easing of the confrontation between Joe Biden and Xi Jinping will last long because the fundamental issue between the two countries is the ideological one. The two, I don't think they can resolve this. So it's only a temporary easing of tension because they both have a need. Um, Kept meltdown. CCP will not become less aggressive. If it does, it's only for the time being. It will come back. Uh, all right, let's see. I have a TZM. Thank you. I enjoy your chats, Lei. Do one ABT China and Asian. Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. All right, there are more questions. Just picking a question from someone who I haven't answered. Ed C. Do you think she's worried that if he breaks all ties with the US, there will be famine in China? Um, I think he does, but he thinks he's gonna rely on Russia for food. And um, yeah, I think famine is a big concern that's on a lot of people's mind. All right, let me see. I'll pick a question from someone who I haven't answered from Tenzing Jigme. Hi, Lei. What major economical disaster you see to the U.S. rich people when CCP continuously let dried up economically without help, as you are mentioning? What economic disaster you see to the U.S. rich people when CCP continuously let dried? I don't know how it would. I think when we have an economic crisis, the people who are hurt the most are people at the bottom of the social strata. Those are the people who will be hurt the most, unfortunately, and not people at the top. Yeah. Okay. From T. Holloway Chuck, a Geiger counter measures radioactivity. You asked about it when the Fukushima water release water. Yes, I thank you. I have been taught that word a couple of times by people, and I remember that by heart now. Geiger, Geiger counter. Is it Geiger? Geiger? Geiger. Geiger counter. Oh, okay. David Lopan, did you hear that both the U.S. Treasury Department and Justice have just begun to seriously crack down on China's illicit drug trade? Lots of indictments and investigations are ongoing. They should have done that a long time ago. It's because fentanyl is killing so many American lives. Um, they should take them down. You know. Um, all right. That's pretty much it. Okay, I did pretty well. I'll take one last question. Let me see. From Jim Swolben. Swolben. Like going to hear Gordon Chan on the 12th. What would be a good question to ask him? What would be a good question to ask Gordon Chan? Ask him if ask him what ask him this question. I want to ask Joe Biden. So, what do you think? How does the U.S. government? What work should U.S. government put in place to prepare an economic meltdown from China? How? What do you think the U.S. government should do right now to protect American public, or to protect U.S. interest in the event of a major economic meltdown in China? That's what I would ask him. Um, how about junta? I've learned that word. You want to give me a test? Junta, right? How did I do? Okay, it's a Spanish word I learned, and it means military dictator. Okay, okay, okay. I think I passed the test for my fans. Okay, all right. Max Shredder, this is my last question. What's your opinion on Wang Qishan? He looks like a tough and smart guy. Is Fan Bingbing his lover? I don't know. I don't know who their lovers are. I think a lot of these Chinese celebrity women are. I think it's sad to be a beautiful Chinese woman in China because you're inevitably wanted for some reason that that will make you very proud. Um, yeah. Okay, that's all for tonight. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you Thursday. Okay, bye bye. Bye.